In the heart of the African savanna, nestled between rolling hills and baobab trees, lies a village called Blenzi. A place where stories whisper through the winds, and the rivers sing songs of ancient truths. Life here flows with the seasons, and though the people live modestly, they are rich in tradition, community, and belief. Welcome to Innocent Stories, where we bring you tales that captivate and inspire. The village sits beside the Great Omi River, a wide, deep stretch of water with a reputation that stretches far beyond the region. This river isn't just a source of water or food. It's a living presence, sacred and feared. Locals speak of crocodiles with eyes that glow like fireflies at dusk, and spirits dwelling beneath its surface, spirits who watch over the land, punish liars, and protect the innocent. Stay tuned, because this tale of jealousy and justice will leave you speechless. In Blenzi, tales of good and evil aren't just bedtime stories. They're woven into the fabric of everyday life. People believe that fate is a living force, that it listens and responds, especially to the purity of one's heart or the weight of one's wrongs. It's here, in this village pulsing with mystery and ancient rhythm, that two girls grow up, bound by family but divided by heart. Mia is known across Blenzi, not only for her beauty, which blooms like the wild acacia, but for her gentle soul. Her voice is soft, her laughter warm, and her hands work wonders, whether weaving mats or helping elders. She's raised by her grandmother, Mama Ao, a respected herbalist whose wisdom is sought from villages near and far. Under Mama Ao's guidance, Mia learns the ways of healing, storytelling, and honoring the spirits of land and water. Then there's Zubida, Mia's stepsister. Where Mia is gentle, Zubida is sharp. Where Mia gives, Zubida takes. Jealousy runs deep in her heart, like roots of the strangler figure. She envies Mia's kindness, her natural grace, the way villagers adore her. Though they share the same household, they might as well live in different worlds. Zubida often watches Mia with narrowed eyes, her mind quietly stirring. Beyond their home stands the palace of Chief Abadil, a man of age and honor, whose son is soon to choose a bride. The news stirs excitement in every household, especially among young women dreaming of gold bangles and royal weddings. But the Omi River has its own plans, and the spirit dwelling within it has already begun to stir, watching, waiting, as the first threads of fate begin to twist. Mia's earliest memories are filled with warmth, her mother's laughter, the soft hum of lullabies, and the rhythm of woven cloth being pulled tight on the loom. Her mother, Abani, was a gifted weaver whose patterns danced with stories. Mia would sit beside her, tiny hands mimicking her every movement, her eyes wide with wonder. But that time was brief. A fever swept through Blenzi one rainy season, and Abani, despite all prayers and herbs, never rose from her mat again. Grief hung in the house like a heavy cloth. Mia's father, Olamide, was a quiet man, strong and well-respected. But the loss of his wife hollowed him. For months, he moved like a ghost. When he finally remarried, the village sighed in relief. The new wife, Halima, came from the neighboring village of Awo, bringing with her a daughter named Zubida. At first, Mia, still small and aching from her mother's absence, looked at her new sister with hope. Maybe she could be someone to laugh with, to chase fireflies with, to braid hair under the mango tree. But it was not to be. Zubida had never known softness. Her life before coming to Blenzi had been shaped by survival, by watching her mother fight for every scrap of dignity. She arrived proud, defiant, and already burning with the need to prove herself better. When she saw Mia kind, graceful, with the village elders already offering warm smiles, jealousy found fertile ground. Zubida did not see Mia's quiet resilience or the sorrow she carried. She saw only admiration that wasn't hers. Mia, despite the changes in her home, continued to shine. Her hands became as skilled as her mother's once were, weaving mats and cloth so beautiful that traders from faraway villages would ask for her by name. Her beauty grew gently, like the slow unfolding of a morning flower. She never asked for praise, yet it came to her. Elders blessed her. Children clung to her skirts. Even the birds seemed to pause when she sang. Zubida, by contrast, was louder, bolder, and quicker to anger. She did not fail to learn, but she lacked patience. Her cloth was rough, herbs often mismatched, and her stories lacked the calm cadence of truth. Still, she wanted what Mia had: adoration, attention, respect. And what she could not earn, she sought to take. When Olamide fell ill several years later, the house grew cold again. This time, no prayers helped, no herbs worked. He died with Mia holding one hand and Halima watching with dry eyes. After the burial, the house shifted. Halima, now head of the household, cast aside all pretenses. She favored Zubida openly, assigning Mia the harshest tasks, fetching water before dawn, tending the fire until midnight, cleaning every corner while her stepsister rested. Mama Ao, too old to intervene directly, did what she could in small ways, leaving food hidden for Mia, whispering words of strength, reminding her that fate sees all. But Zubida's resentment only deepened. Each time Mia smiled despite her hardship, each time someone praised her weaving, each time the chief's guards looked her way, the bitterness inside Zubida grew. She began to watch Mia, not as a sister, but as a rival, one she could not defeat with skill, only by removing altogether. And in the silence of many nights, while the river whispered to the moon and crocodiles lurked beneath the surface, dark thoughts began to take root. The sun had barely risen when the drums began to beat, a low, rhythmic sound that rippled through the village like thunder over dry earth. Doors opened, heads turned, and soon every path in Blenzy led to the village square. At the center stood a royal messenger, dressed in the colors of Chief Abadil's house, deep indigo with golden embroidery that shimmered in the early light. He raised his staff, striking it 3 times on the ground before speaking. By order of Chief Abadil, blessed by the spirits and honored by the ancestors, let it be known that his son, Prince Jed, seeks a bride. She shall be chosen from among the daughters of the land, not for wealth or name, but for grace, wisdom, and the strength of a pure heart. In 7 days, all eligible young women shall present themselves at the festival of the crescent moon. A murmur passed through the crowd like wind in the trees. A royal wedding, a chance to be queen. In a village where most dreams were sown from cloth or harvested from the soil, this was a spark that lit every eye with wonder. Mothers began whispering, girls exchanged glances, already imagining themselves in fine beads, their names spoken across kingdoms. In the home of Halima, 2 hearts stirred, but not in the same way. Zubida's breath caught as the words sank in. She stood taller, already picturing herself seated beside the prince, wrapped in gold, bowing to no one. This was her chance to rise above them all, to take what she believed was rightfully hers. The thought filled her with a wild kind of hope until she saw Mia. Mia hadn't said a word. She simply stood near the doorway, hands still holding the broom she'd been using to sweep. Her eyes were calm, but a soft smile tugged at her lips, as if something deep within her had been stirred awake. She didn't speak of dreams or riches, but the quiet sparkle in her gaze made Zubida's stomach twist. As the day passed, the village buzzed. Old women in the market leaned in close, saying, "It is Mia the prince will notice. Who else carries herself like the queen of the river?" Young men, once shy, teased her gently. Even Mama Ao said, with a knowing look, "The spirits walk with you, child. They will guide your feet." Zubida heard every word. Each one was a thorn. Each laugh, each compliment, each glance toward Mia was a reminder that no matter how loudly she stepped into the light, it was Mia the light embraced. Jealousy, once a slow simmer, now roared like fire under dry wood. And hatred, sharp and patient, began to take form. She no longer dreamed of simply winning. She dreamed of erasing. If Mia was not there to walk into the prince's sight, then surely the choice would be clear. The idea was wicked, but it came to her like a whisper from the shadows of her own soul. And by the time the moon rose that night, Zubida had already begun to plan. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe to Innocent Stories for more tales of fate and triumph. The days leading up to the festival of the crescent moon passed in a flurry of excitement. Girls practiced their dances, mothers polished old beads, and tailors worked from dawn till dusk. Yet within the quiet corners of Halima's compound, Zubida was not preparing a dress. She was preparing her trap. She watched Mia closely, calculating each moment. Mia, ever beautiful, spent her days helping Mama Ao prepare healing powders and her nights stitching simple gowns from dyed cotton. She never spoke of the prince, never claimed she would attend the festival. Yet, everyone acted as if her presence there was inevitable. Zubida could no longer bear it. On the day before the festival, just as the first stars began to pierce the evening sky, Zubida put her plan into motion. Mia, she called sweetly, approaching her stepsister, who was arranging herbs outside.
Mama Ao said we're out of river time. You know how important it is for the cleansing incense. Will you fetch some before nightfall?
Mia looked up, puzzled.
Now.
The river path is long, and the light is fading. Zubida smiled, the mask of concern slipping easily over her face.
I would go, but Mama Ao asked for you.
You know she trusts you most with these things. Though something inside her stirred with unease, Mia nodded. She wrapped a shawl over her shoulders and took her herb pouch. As she stepped into the fading light, she didn't see the way Zubida followed her from a distance, keeping to the shadows, eyes glinting with cruel intent.
The Omi River was quieter than usual that evening.
The frogs had hushed, and even the breeze had slowed, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Mia reached the spot where the thyme grew, just beyond a cluster of flat rocks near the river's edge. She knelt, her fingers brushing the tiny purple blossoms, unaware of the presence behind her. Then, without a sound, Zubida stepped forward and shoved her with both hands. Mia's gasp was swallowed by the rush of water. Her body tumbled into the river, limbs flailing, heart pounding. The water was cold and heavy, pulling her downward. She surfaced once, just in time to see Zubida watching from the rocks, her expression blank, unmoved. Then the current dragged her under again. Beneath the surface, the river was a world of green light and silence. Mia kicked, trying to fight, but the weight of water was too much.
Panic set in until she saw them, eyes glowing, unblinking, watching from the deep.
Crocodiles, a dozen of them, maybe more, drifting toward her with eerie calm. Their mouths did not open. Their limbs did not thrash. They simply approached, like shadows under moonlight. Mia froze, certain this was her end. But instead of striking, they circled her slowly, as if inspecting her, testing the soul that tumbled within her chest. Then, just as suddenly, they turned away, forming a circle that began to spin, drawing her downward in a gentle spiral. The world blurred, light fractured, and Mia disappeared beneath the surface. Zubida stood frozen, staring at the rippling water where Mia had vanished. There had been no scream, no thrashing fight, just a quiet descent. She waited a while longer, eyes darting for any sign, but the river was still. A crocodile surfaced briefly, its yellow eyes locking with hers before gliding silently away. She turned and ran. Back in the village, she burst into the compound, her voice pitched with panic.
Mia, she's gone.
The crocodiles took her. She went to fetch herbs, and I heard her scream. By the time I reached the river, all I saw was blood and water.
Halima wailed.
Villagers gathered. A few men went with torches, but the river yielded nothing, no cloth, no footprints, no signs, just silence.
She shouldn't have gone alone, Zubida cried.
The river is cursed at night. And so the village mourned.
Candles were lit. Songs of passing were sung.
Mama Ao, though old and wise, said nothing, only stared long into the fire that night, her lips moving in quiet prayer.
Zubida, dressed in white for mourning, wept for all to see.
But in her heart, there was no grief, only triumph. With Mia gone, the path to the prince and the crown was clear. Or so she thought. Mia awoke to warmth, not the warmth of the sun or fire, but something deeper, like the embrace of an old song. She was no longer in the river's grip, no longer gasping or afraid. Instead, she floated in a vast hall of light and water, where currents twisted like silk and golden fish darted past her like messengers. Above her, shimmering reeds reached upward, swaying to music only the river could hear.
She stood slowly, realizing she could breathe. Her clothes, once soaked and torn, now shimmered like woven moonlight.
Before her rose a throne sculpted from coral and crystal, and seated upon it was a figure draped in robes of flowing water and glowing moss. The river spirit, its face shifting with the tide, at once male and female, old and young, gentle and fierce. Its eyes, deep as whirlpools, regarded Mia with quiet knowing. "You have come," it said, though its lips never moved.
Not by choice, but by fate.
Mia fell to her knees, tears brimming.
"Am I dead?"
"No," the spirit replied.
"Not yet.
You were taken by betrayal, but held by grace. The river has tested many souls. Yours will be no different. With a wave of its hand, the world around her changed. In the first trial, she stood again before Zubida, but this time, her stepsister wept and begged forgiveness. A voice urged Mia to strike her, to take revenge. But Mia stepped back, lowered her gaze, and said, "I forgive you, not for your sake, but for mine." The scene vanished. In the second trial, a lost child cried beside a fallen tree, calling for a mother. Mia carried the child across rivers and thorns, only to find it was a spirit in disguise, testing her compassion. She had passed. In the third trial, she was offered a crown of gold by a shadowy figure who promised her rule, beauty, and power, if only she denounced the truth of what had been done to her. Mia refused, saying, "A crown born of lies will only weigh heavier with time." When the trials ended, the river spirit rose. "You are not without pain," it said. "But your heart remains clear. For this, you will return, but no longer as you were." A ripple passed through the water. Mia's voice filled the chamber, not with words, but with sound pure and vibrant, like the wind through acacia leaves, like the lullaby of the river itself. "You carry now the gift of healing," the spirit told her. "Your voice will mend what is broken, bodies, spirits, even hearts. Use it with humility." Mia bowed her head. "Thank you." The river began to rise, lifting her gently. Her luminous robes faded into rags. Her face dulled, her hair tangled, but her eyes held the same light. The spirit's voice echoed one last time. "You must walk the earth again, hidden, but not lost. Let the truth find its own way." And with that, the current surged. Mia felt herself rise, rush upward through light and water and silence, until she burst into the world above, gasping for breath beside the banks of the Omi River. The sky was new, the world had turned, and the festival of the crescent moon was about to begin. The sun hung low in the sky, casting golden light over the village of Blenzy. Drums echoed across the fields, and the scent of roasted maize and sweet yam filled the air. Bright fabrics fluttered in the breeze. Children chased one another with painted faces, and the square thronged with joy. The festival of the crescent moon had begun, and at its center stood the village's pride, a grand celebration in honor of Prince Jed's search for a bride. Zubida stood among the gathering crowd, dressed in the finest cloth her mother could find. Her hair was braided with cowrie shells, and her arms jingled with borrowed bangles. She smiled at the villagers, her eyes constantly flicking toward the prince, who sat beneath a canopy of palm leaves beside his father, Chief Abadil. His face was calm, unreadable. But Zubida told herself that today, fate would reward her. But just beyond the crowd, near the edge of the square where the dancers rested and traders sold carved trinkets, a strange figure moved through the festival unnoticed. Wrapped in worn cloth, her feet bare, her hair hidden beneath a scarf, the girl looked like a traveler or a beggar who had wandered in from the road. Her clothes were ragged, her body thin, but her posture was quiet and sure. No one recognized her, not Halima, not Zubida, not even Mama Ao, though her eyes lingered on the girl for a heartbeat longer than the rest. As the drums paused and the elder griot called for songs to be offered to the ancestors, a hush fell over the crowd. One by one, young women stepped forward to sing or dance, each hoping to be noticed by the prince. Their voices were sweet, their movements graceful, but none held the spark the people longed for. Then the stranger stepped forward. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Who was she to interrupt? But before anyone could stop her, she raised her hands and began to sing. The first note was soft, so gentle it seemed to float rather than sound. Then it grew, like rain swelling into a stream, like wind moving through trees. Her voice was unlike any they had heard, rich, haunting, and filled with something older than the land itself. It was not just music. It was memory. It was healing. A woman in the crowd cried out. Her child, who had been lying feverish and still for days, now stirred. The girl's song wrapped around the child like water wraps the roots of a tree, and the child opened his eyes. Color returned to his cheeks. He sat up and smiled. The crowd erupted. Elders whispered among themselves. Some crossed their arms in awe. Children ran to touch the hem of her garment, as if by doing so, they might share in the blessing. Who is she? They asked. A spirit, a healer, a messenger of the ancestors?
Zubida's smile vanished. Prince Jed, silent until now, rose from his seat.
His eyes had never left the stranger. When the last note of her song faded into the wind, he stepped forward. "Come closer," he said gently. The girl raised her face, and for the first time, someone truly looked into her eyes, not at her rags or the dirt on her feet, but into the soul that had traveled through death and water and spirit. The prince looked at her for a long moment and then turned to his father. "There's more to this one than we can see," he said, and the village held its breath, for something long lost had just returned. Prince Jed stood motionless as the last echoes of the mysterious girl's song faded into the quiet hush of the crowd. The people of Blenzy, once cheering and dancing, now stared with wide eyes and open mouths, as if a spirit had descended among them. Even the wind had paused, the drums held still, and time itself seemed to wait for her next breath. "Who are you?" the prince asked, his voice low but firm as he stepped closer. The girl looked around. Her eyes swept over the faces she had known all her life, friends, elders, neighbors. They did not know her, not through the veil of rags and hardship, not after all she had endured. But her heart did not tremble. She stepped forward, lifting her chin, her voice calm and clear. "I am Mia," she said. "Daughter of Abani and Olamide, raised in this very village by Mama Ao, whom the spirits favored. I was cast into the Omi River by the hands of one who wore my blood as kin. But the river did not take my life. It gave me a second one." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Halima's hands flew to her mouth. Mama Ao stood, eyes glistening as tears spilled silently down her cheeks. Zubida staggered back, her skin paling. Prince Jed's brows drew together. "Mia, the one we mourned, the one taken by crocodiles?" "I was not taken by death," Mia continued. "I was held by the spirit of the river, tested and judged. I was not destroyed because truth is not so easily drowned." The sky darkened suddenly. Clouds rolled in with unnatural speed, and a wind whipped through the festival square, sending cloth and leaves flying. The villagers clutched one another, some falling to their knees in fear. And then, with a flash of blue lightning and a roar of thunder, the river spirit appeared. It rose from the center of the square in a whirl of mist and water, towering and majestic, its form both fluid and solid, with a voice like thunder on rain-soaked earth. "This child speaks true," the spirit said, its voice heard not with ears, but in the bones of every person present. "She was betrayed by her sister's hand, yet spared by the river's mercy. Her heart is pure, her trials many, her gifts earned." The spirit turned its gaze to Zubida, who had begun to edge away from the gathering, trembling. "You," it boomed. "You who wear jealousy like a second skin, you whose lies brought grief upon the innocent. Did you think the river forgets?" Zubida broke into a run, her breath ragged, skirts tangling at her ankles. She pushed through the crowd, tears streaming down her face, but she had taken no more than 10 steps before the ground beneath her feet began to tremble. A crack split open, dry and deep, as though the very earth had heard the spirit's judgment. With a cry, Zubida stumbled, falling to her knees. The earth opened wider. She reached out, screaming, but no hand reached back. In one final breathless moment, she was swallowed whole by the land, and the earth closed over her as if she had never existed. Silence fell. The river spirit looked over the people one last time. "Let this be a lesson carried in your hearts. The river sees. The river remembers. And fate bends always toward truth." With that, it vanished in a mist of silver and rain. The sky cleared. The breeze returned. Slowly, the people turned to Mia, no longer ragged, no longer hidden. The glow of spirit light still lingered on her skin. Prince Jed stepped forward and knelt before her, not in proposal, but in respect. "The crown I sought in a bride, you already wear within." The villagers began to chant her name, first softly, then louder. "Mia! Mia!" As if by saying it, they could finally believe she had returned. Mama Ao came forward, embracing her granddaughter. "Welcome home, my child," she whispered. And so, justice had come not from swords or vengeance, but from the river, from truth, and from a heart that had never turned bitter. The morning after the festival, the village of Blenzy awoke not only to clear skies, but to a new beginning. Where once there had been confusion and whispers, now there was unity, reverence, and quiet celebration. The girl they had believed lost to the river had returned, not only alive, but transformed. Mia's truth had broken through lies. And the people could not forget what they had seen with their own eyes: the song that healed, the storm that judged, the spirit that spoke. In a ceremony held beneath the shade of the sacred baobab, Prince Jed stood before the elders, the chief, and all the people of Blenzy. With a crown of woven gold and river pearls, he placed a garland gently upon Mia's brow, not as a prize, not as a trophy, but as a recognition of what already was. "Mia of Blenzy," he declared, "daughter of wisdom, heart of light, you are chosen not for beauty, though yours is great, nor for power, though you carry it. You are chosen because fate itself has spoken your name." The people cheered. Flowers were scattered at her feet, and children reached up to touch the hem of her dress. Mama Ao, her back straighter than it had been in years, stood nearby with tears of joy. For Mia, the moment was not just an honor, it was a restoration. Her name, once nearly buried, now rang through the village like a blessing. And yet, amid the celebration, Mia's heart carried a quiet weight. Halima, her stepmother, had not spoken since the day of the festival. She had remained inside, eyes hollow, her face a map of regret and fear. The spirit had taken Zubida but left Halima to witness the truth and reckon with it. One evening, Mia visited her. She brought no guards, no crown, only herself. Halima, too weak to speak, looked up with trembling eyes. "I forgive you," Mia said softly. "Not because you ask it, but because I no longer carry the anger. Let it rest." Halima wept. Days later, she fell ill and quietly left the village, never to return. In time, the people of Blenzy built a shrine at the edge of the Omi River, a place of prayer and offering where villagers could come to honor the spirit and give thanks for justice and protection. The shrine bore Mia's name, not as a goddess, but as a reminder that goodness, even when cast aside, always rises. And so, Mia's tale became more than a story. It became a lesson. Elders told it under starlight. Children recited it during festivals. Mothers reminded their daughters of Mia's grace. Fathers warned their sons of Zubida's envy. The river still flowed. The crocodiles still watched. And the spirits still waited, silent but present. And in the heart of Blenzy, a queen in waiting walked among her people, humble and whole, living proof that fate, when guided by truth and courage, will always find its way home. The story of Mia is more than a tale of loss and return. It is a reflection of timeless truths carried in the heart of African oral tradition. At its core, it teaches that jealousy, when left unchecked, becomes a fire that consumes not only its target but the one who carries it. Zubida's envy blinded her to her sister's goodness. And in her attempt to rise, she chose to destroy. But in doing so, she sealed her own fate. Her downfall serves as a powerful reminder that no ambition built on cruelty can truly stand. In contrast, Mia's patience, humility, and unwavering kindness became her shield. She did not fight back with bitterness or revenge. Even when faced with betrayal and death, her heart remained open. Through her trials in the spirit world, she proved that true strength lies not in power or pride, but in compassion and truth. In the end, her goodness returned to her multiplied, not in riches alone, but in healing, honor, and peace. There is a spiritual rhythm in this story, deeply rooted in African belief. Nature sees, the spirits watch, and fate is never truly silent. The river, feared and respected by the villagers, becomes both the test and the judge. It swallows the lie, but carries the truth. The spirit of the river does not act on impulse, but on justice, offering mercy where it is earned and punishment where it is due. This affirms the long-held wisdom that those who live in harmony with the natural world, with clean hearts and honest hands, will always find protection and favor. Lastly, the tale speaks to the importance of respecting ancestral spirits, elders, and the balance of the natural world. Mama Ao, with her quiet strength and spiritual wisdom, represents the guidance of ancestors. The river shrine built at the end of the story symbolizes this enduring respect, a place where people can remember, reflect, and remain connected to forces larger than themselves. Through the journey of two sisters, this folktale reminds us that the world is always watching, not just with eyes, but with spirit. And in that world, kindness is never wasted, and evil never goes unanswered. Such is the wisdom passed from mouth to ear, from generation to generation across the lands of Africa.
Thank you for joining us on Innocent Stories. Subscribe and share to keep these timeless tales alive.